Hey everyone. Oh my goodness. I'm so sorry. Oh. Can everyone see me? I guess put a thumbs up if you can see me in the chat. I'll put my light on. I was having the biggest problem because it was trying to make me download something and then I don't know. Very, very rarely ever done it by myself. And make me better at this. But I'll get there, I promise. Oh my lord. I mean, if some people that we all know can figure this out, I can figure it out, right? Okay. Let me just tighten that up. Okay. Let's see. Okay, now everyone should be able to see and hear me better, right? Okay. Well, so yeah, I mean, as most of you can see, I am in Bowling Green, Kentucky, and today was the first full day of trial for Brooks Houck and Joseph Lawson, who are both on trial for the involvement in in the murder of Crystal Rogers. I am going to do a deep dive into the whole case and all the other cases involved. But I did want to bring you just an overview of everything that came out today. I've got some of it on my iPad, and then I've got some of it in my notes. So I will start with the tone at the courthouse has been very positive. I feel like towards Crystal and her family. I haven't seen a lot of negativity towards them, um, and it's been a very different experience than the one other trial that I've attended in person. Um, and again, I promise the next time I do this, I will be much better. It's been a long time, um, but no. This morning, court started at 8:30 Central time. And I said I am planning on doing an entire series on all the intricacies of the case of Crystal Rogers, as well as the unsolved murders that have really plagued the town of Bardstown over the last decade or so. Um, Late yesterday afternoon, a jury of 8 women and 7 men were seated. The prosecution did start their opening statement this morning. I'm sure some of you have already watched some coverage if you've followed this case, but um, essentially, I mean, the jury was sat. It's been interesting because I'm still not fully understanding how Brooks and Joseph are standing trial at the same time because they have separate representation. Um, and from everything I saw today, I really didn't see a ton of involvement from Joseph Lawson's attorney. That may change in the coming days. Um, but um, I will say that I think that, and I'm going to read off my notes from some of it because I did write down a lot of stuff, and I want to make sure that I got it, that I get it correct. It's also been a very busy, long day. I actually did not make the decision to come to Bowling Green until about 9:30 last night. So I honestly have not even booked a hotel yet. So once this live stream is over, I am going to go find a hotel, get a shower, because it's hot out here, and get ready for tomorrow morning. But I will say that I think the prosecution did an excellent job. I think that most of you know Crystal Rogers' body has never been found, which makes a case exponentially harder to prosecute and to solve beyond reasonable doubt when you don't have a body. She's presumed dead because this is a nobody case. The prosecution understands that, and they didn't shy away from it. They said this is a circumstantial case. That the evidence, even just that they presented today, to me seems so strong. I feel confident that we're going to see justice finally after 10 years for Crystal. Granted, the family still has a long way to go for justice and all the other things that have happened in that town, but still. Lawson, I will say, a lot of people, I don't know if a lot of people know, but he's paraplegic, which I believe happened after the murder of Crystal. And so every time the jury comes in, of course, we stand out of respect for the jury. And, it is mentioned that, he can't. So, if you hear anyone say something, about why he doesn't stand up, he's a paraplegic. I think a lot of you probably already know that his father was convicted of a similar charge in May. The prosecution took about an hour to deliver their opening statements, and I took a lot of notes during the prosecution's opening statements because there was a lot of things about this case that I assumed and about Brooks Houck's personality and what I thought about him personally, but um, I was surprised that um, well, I'll just read it from my notes. The prosecution took approximately an hour to deliver. One of the most important things I think that they said a quote that said, "One of the most important things you bring into this courtroom is your God-given common sense." And then, with a very well-timed, I thought, pause, and then just the right amount of emotion in his voice, he said to the jury, "Roger's case is very sad. Make sure you bring it with you." The jury was paying attention to every word he said. The prosecution also, which is, I did find it kind of surprising, several times mentioned Brooks' mother, Rosemary, and his brother, Nick. Um, he went into depth about how much Rosemary disliked Crystal. And my writing was a little sloppy at this one point, so I can't remember if it's the exact word that he used, but when is for to add that there was someone that that he mentioned Rosemary talking to named Danny, who's on the witness list, I think, potentially. And he was quoted as saying, he tells her, "If you have enough money, you can get anything done." I think the last name, if I did hear it right, was Singleton. I need to look it up. Who worked for, I believe, Brooks, and I thought one of the other most shocking things that I heard was that Rosemary um, asked if he could try or to find someone to, quote, "get rid of Crystal." Um, I felt really strong implications of the prosecutor about this being deeper than just Brooks, also including the mother and brother. I've always thought Nick was involved. I had never really given as much weight into his mother's involvement, but the prosecutor did not shy away from that. One of the other most shocking things I heard today was when the prosecutor, and his name was Lisowski, I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, said that Rosemary Houck and Crystal not only did not get along, but in my head there was a shocking resemblance to some of the stuff that she said to Angela Wagner. for anyone that's ever followed the Piketon massacre or the Pike County murders, where Angela Wagner, her husband, and her two sons basically slaughtered, brutally murdered 8 people, all for the simple reason that they wanted custody of the grandchild. And Rosemary said that she's told someone Rogers won't be around anymore, so we'll get to raise their child up right. One piece of information I didn't know is that the prosecution says that they have evidence that the plan started approximately 2 weeks before Crystal went missing. It was mentioned several times that Brooks Houck had told people about, which I call it the ruse, about getting her alone by promising to have a romantic date night, and a kid-free romantic date night. And she had talked to a couple of people about that, which, when I get into the witnesses, we'll talk about some of. He even alleged that they went to the farm of Brooks' families, and they believe she died around 7:30. Prosecutor Lisowski then mentioned the phone data, and that he said Houck's left the farm around midnight. However, after he left the farm, the prosecutor added that Houck spent 15 to 20 minutes in the parking lot of the Old Kentucky Home campground. I'd never heard that before. Ironically, father and son Stephen and Joseph had a 3-minute conversation on the phone almost at that exact time. And then Stephen Lawson had a 13-second call with Brooks Houck. He went into detail about Brooks tinting his truck windows the absolute darkest tint that he could, which I didn't really think much of at first. I kind of was like, I wonder how this will even play with the jury or how much weight they'll put into it. But his reasoning behind including that is that he wants to show the premeditation to the point where he knew that he'd be on surveillance film all across town, and he wanted to make sure no one could see inside of his windows to know that Crystal was not in that truck. Her phone data contradicts the statements, because her phone data also shows that her phone was turned off, or died, or was turned off around 9:30 p.m. I will say I've always been suspicious about Nick's involvement. Now with Rosemary too. The prosecutor, again, I really was over. It was something that kept coming up, is how many times he mentioned this being a family affair, basically. And I kept wondering, well, then why aren't they charged? And he referred to them as, quote, unindicted co-conspirators. So who knows what will happen there. Then there was something else that I did not know about previously, but that when the police did a search, they found multiple recordings that several of the Houcks had done. They had taken secret audio during the grand jury, and it's going to be really interesting if they actually play that for us in court. I hope to God they do. And then again, keeping with the theme that most criminals are pretty dumb, Nick Houck, who is, of course, Brooks' brother, but also a Bardstown police officer. I mean, he mainly collected things to only to the state, has to rely on his pressure from the family and media. And oh no, sorry, stupid head. He turned his phone off early on July 3rd, which was the Friday that Crystal was last seen. and he didn't turn it back on for 24 hours almost. And first of all, I mean, is that just the new stupid criminal thing to do? But second of all, I mean, I would think if you're a police officer of all professions, being reachable is something that would be important. Um, so that stood out to me, and I thought that was interesting. Um, After the prosecution finished their opening statements, Steve Schroing, I think is his last name, who's Brooke Houck's attorney, took his turn, mainly collecting the only thing, mainly basically stating his entire argument on that the only thing the state has to rely on is that they were receiving pressure from the family and the media, and that there's no solid evidence here. And I'll be honest, he sounded like a good attorney, but I didn't buy what he was saying, and I did not see any of the jury being positively reactive in or engaged in what he was saying either. I mean, in fact, I'll be honest. I mean, it was kind of like he took a page out of defense attorney 101 behavior, and said, "Oh, the only argument is that his client is cooperative, and he let them search without a warrant, and that because of the attention of his arrest, and the approach, the public outrage, that none of it really landed really well at all." Um, and his pacing isn't very. I don't think his pacing was that great either. Um, from and then I actually did go out. I had to use the restroom, and then I came downstairs, so I did not hear Joseph Lawson's attorney's opening statements. I meant to get the notes from someone else that was in there, but I don't. It must not have lasted long, because by the time I came back up, it was over. It was over. I expected actually them to go to lunch pretty quickly after that, but they actually called the prosecution's first witness, which was Crystal's daughter, Kylie. Fenwick said Houck had talked to her about adopting her, but once Houck and Roger's son was born, who's there was actually here yesterday, who was 3 years old at the time and is now 13. Everything changed, she said. I never had a father figure. I thought he was going to step up to that plate, she testified, which was hard to hear. But that 4th of July holiday, she kept trying to call and text her mom. She got no reply. And she said she did it over and over again. And she said it was so unlike her because they talked every day, all day, every day. It was also very telling to me that she then testified that when she tried to contact Brooks, she never got a response from him either. And then I know I definitely brought out the emotion in me when she started to choke up talking about Brooks Houck, because I mean, it's easy to look at him as a monster and look at the things he's done and be it, but I mean, there was a point in time where like she said herself, she thought that he was going to be the dad in her life, and my heart just breaks for all of Crystal's children and family. Let's see. I will say also, after spending the day staring at Brooks Houck for the first time in person, um, I kept going back to the thought that there's something about his aura or personality or just shape of his head or something. I don't know what it was, but I was like, oh my gosh, it's Barry Morphy, Chad Daybell, Chris Watts, Scott Peterson, Brian Walsh, all wrapped up into one. And I think the only thing they have in common is that they're all narcissistic, ego driven, weak, unimportant little men riddled with male fragility and probably suffering from small dick energy. Oh, and they also don't have a heart or a conscience. So there's that. I saw several members of Crystal's family, some of which I knew from seeing them. I've never talked to anyone in Crystal's family until today, but I did know some of their faces, and and I know that some of Brooks Houck's family was there. His brother Nick has not been to anything apparently. It is a very busy courtroom. Lots of people were wearing pink, which is apparently Crystal's favorite color, and a lot of people wore it, including me, to support her. And I mean, this is a case that I've never really covered publicly, but it's a case that I've been passionate about for 10 years since it happened. Sweat's making my glasses run under my face. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to stay for the entire trial. I want to, but I I just don't know if I just don't know if I can make it happen. So, I mean, if I do a good job today or tomorrow, let me know, and maybe I'll try to do whatever I can to stay, but not as far as being able to afford to do it all right now. Like I said, it's also hot. One thing I thought, this is kind of a lighter note, but I did I did get to meet some of Crystal's family, and we were talking about how many of the family members were saying how uncomfortable the seats were, and I was like, compared to the Delphi seats, those seats were like a dream. So I anyone that went to the Delphi trial would know how bad the seats in Delphi were. But I was like, oh, I should go to Walmart or something and buy like 20 seat cushions and give them all to the family members of Crystal's, so that they can be comfortable in the next week to 2 weeks. But yeah, I just thought that was interesting because I'm like, oh, it brought me right back to those seats in Delphi. So as far as like the first witness, then we went to lunch, and then I'll be honest, I was 15 minutes late coming back from lunch, so I missed a little bit of the first witness after lunch. But it was a friend of Crystal's, named Christy Hall. She basically testified to a lot, just her friendship with Crystal and some of the stuff from that weekend. I like that, just like in Delphi and also in the Lori Vallow Daybell cases, the jury has been able to ask questions too. If I remember correctly, none of the jury didn't ask any questions today to any of the witnesses. But then again, we didn't get to too many witnesses today. The second witness was Amanda Greenwell, who is second cousins on both Crystal's mom and dad's side. And I won't make any Kentucky jokes because I also live in the South. So, but she would babysit the kids, but not Eli. She ran into Crystal at Walmart on July 3rd, which played into the the timeline of that day. And they actually, one of the things I thought was important that the prosecutor brought up in her testimony was that they, while they were at Walmart, discussed Amanda, the witness's, one of her children was having a birthday party coming up, and Crystal volunteered to help plan it and do things for it. Which, if you're planning on making yourself go missing, you don't typically make future plans the day of. So I thought that was a subtle but important um, part thing to include in the testimony. Um, some of my writing is really bad. Um, they kept having all the witnesses testify to the fact that was raining all day on the 3rd of July. I'm not sure of the relevance of that technically yet, but I did notice that the prosecutor asked all 3 witnesses today about the rain that day. So we'll see. Um, she and Crystal had answered. She said they never discussed who was going to watch Eli on that evening during Crystal's big date night with Brooke. Um, During cross, the defense questioned the time of the encounter, um, and the witness pretty much shut him down right away and said it was 3:15 or so, and then there were no juror questions. That was the extent of it. Um, and then we got into at 1:39 Central Time. Um, Detective Jonathan Snow took the stand. Who a little bit of his background is that he was a Bowling County Sheriff Department, started in Taylorsville in '97, worked for a while for Bardstown PD. He worked for another agency that I missed the name of. Um, he said he then was part of a little metro unit, and then he came back to Nielsen County, and that Nelson County had 40,000 residents. Bardstown is the biggest town in the county. And Bardstown, I think, has a population of about 13,500. At least it did in 2015, and that's the dates he was referencing. He retired in 2019. He did mention how small of a department it was, and it's something I'd never thought of before, but in such a small department, he said that no one had specialty roles. So there was no homicide division, or there was no vice division, or child crimes against children. Everyone just pretty much took the next case, or whatever, as long as they were qualified enough to do it. He talked about how on July 5th, 2015, which is the day that Sherry Ballard, Crystal's mother, and someone that I admire immensely, um, when she finally, when she reported Crystal missing, that um, Snow got called into work. Sorry, that person was too lazy to pedal, apparently. And that when he was called into work on the 5th, that he was told there was a missing persons case, quote, that is out of the ordinary. Snow was not on call that weekend because it was I think at that point it would have been a Sunday. But his counterpart actually got in a wreck in a different county on his way to respond to it. So Snow had to actually step in, and then it ended up being his case. He also then had dealt with the discovery of the Crystal's car being found on the parkway. Like I said, Sherry had reported Crystal missing on the 5th. They said Crystal's family. I think I've heard it confirmed in the past that Crystal's dad and brother are the ones that located the vehicle after being contacted by family friends that they had seen it on the parkway, and multiple family friends had contacted them saying they saw it on the parkway. I Snow testified that he entered Crystal into the NCIC so that when you put that in, it triggers a request for verification, so that if a missing person is located or not, it either takes them out of it or keeps them in it. It's standard to place someone in that and maintain. Oh, there are standards in place if you are participating in that program, and you have to do certain things to stay in it, or you lose access to it. So there are departments out there that if they don't play by the rules of that organization, that they don't get to be a part of it. The car was found, but if anyone that follows this case knows, it's mile marker 14. They then displayed an overhead aerial shot of the town of Bardstown that showed the area that the car was found on, mile marker 14. It also showed it showed all of Nelson County. Crystal's brother did touch the vehicle, but no one from the family got into the vehicle. They did note that the seat had been pushed all the way back. Her purse, her cell phone were sitting in the car, as well as the keys were in the ignition. Snow mentioned that having a wife himself, he doesn't feel like it would be common for a woman to leave those items in the car. Then state exhibits 5 through 11 were pictures of the roadway where the car was found, the vehicle, as it was all at the time when Snow discovered it, which I'm sure goes into chain of custody. There were 3 pics shown of the car from different from further away than each other. And then there was also a phone charger plugged in and working fine in the middle console, even though Crystal's phone was dead. So whatever happened to her, if she was ever even in that car, she never bothered to charge her phone, or no one did. Crystal's phone was off. Like I said, later it was then found to be dead. The FBI determined there was a small piece of metal inside the tire, which is causing the tire to appear low. I've heard some of the families say that it didn't necessarily look entirely flat, and that Crystal actually had ruined a rim once from driving on that same road because she didn't want to pull over, and that it wasn't completely flat. There was a sidebar, and I meant to take a note of how many sidebars there were, and I can't remember now, but they did have several sidebars. Deputy Boyle entered his report on July 5th. Snow called Brooks. Snow called Brooks, and then they started talking about his interview, which at first he was interviewed at 8:30, and Brooks claimed that he was at the farm from 7:30 to 11. There was a 10-minute break. We came back at 2:22 Central Time. Then they started to show the video of the police interview with Brooks, Houck, and Snow, and the people in the gallery we couldn't hear it. All the lawyers all had headphones on, and the jury all had headphones on. Why I'm not sure. Um, because from everything I could see in the video, it was the same one that's been publicly put out before. And then especially because after a certain point, um, oh, they had another sidebar, and then oh, I had a side note of that during that sidebar that I was looking over watching Crystal's family, and they all were sitting throughout the entire thing so stoic and brave. I can't imagine how they must feel, and I all day I just wanted to get up and give Sherry a big hug. Um, but then again, I don't want to be a weirdo, not yet anyway. Um, so then they started playing the portion of the video with audio that the gallery could hear. So I don't know why I said that they didn't play the beginning of it with that the gallery could hear, but we could then hear the end. Or not the end, but we could hear it after a certain point. Um, Brooke takes a call. Well, I mean, for anyone that's seen the interview, Brooks takes a call during it. He talks about how Eli is with Nick. Then Brooks. Oh, then the detectives tell Brooks what they found in the car, and I could tell that Snow was playing nice guy. And I felt like there was definitely some strategy into him um baiting Brooks with the like, oh yeah, we know you're a good guy. We know you're stroking the ego, doing that stuff to get him to open up. I mean, I think it's just a pretty standard interview technique. Um, Started asking about their relationship, and I definitely got the impression from the questions he was asking that he probably already knew the answers to most of the questions he was asking Brooks about their relationship. Um, According to Brooks, their only disagreement in Crystal was that Crystal would accuse him of treating Eli better than the other kids. Um, I'm like literally sweating now. Um, and said it was early, but the last fight they had about that was earlier Friday on July 3rd. So then stresses all of her four kids. Oh yeah, then Brooks he stresses that she's got four other kids, and um they're all by different baby daddies, and points out that oh she even had to give one of them to her parents to raise, which I thought was disgusting of him to 2 days after the mother of his child goes missing, he is going to throw something like that out there. I think I actually said effing dickhead. um so then Brooks says nothing happened, but points out that her cousin's names. Oh no, Brooks did point out that Crystal's car was in her cousin's name, and I guess it had something to do with so that her ex couldn't get couldn't get it, and I thought it was then smart of the prosecution to point out and Snow even said, he immediately thought, well, it's interesting that why didn't you why would she put it in your name? Um, so then Brooks started talking about some the kind of the timeline from that day, and I couldn't hear some of it. It was really muffled. But it's all in that video that's on YouTube from that interrogation. So I think anyone can go back and watch that. Um, mm, Brooks makes a point to, of course, he's a amazing person. He gets up every day at 5 or 6 a.m. and Crystal always sleeps in much later. Um, she was asleep when he left that Friday morning, allegedly. Um, oh, he said the baby was in bed with her, but then he said later Friday, she said that she had to go to a rental property. they gave the address. It was 107 something. Was the address of the rental property. Um, Brooks then talked about getting on his new. He called it a little tractor. I've heard it called a like skid steer or something before, whatever. Um, and he said Eli would sometimes stay with the oldest daughter, but he he would never be like completely clear as to where the kids were. I don't even know if he knew, like who had the kids at what time, or or if Crystal really is just the one that handled all of that. Brooks said that he mowed for 30 minutes because he hates to waste time, and that because he gotten home earlier from work that day than normal, that Crystal wanted to take Eli to the farm. So of course she wanted to go to the farm. It was her fault that she went missing because she wanted to go to the farm. Um, and I said, of course, blame her for everything. Why not? You're the angel. Um, Brooks claims that Kylie was at the house at the time with Crystal. Brooks said that they went to the farm at 7:30. He said he probably saw his mom out there, but doesn't remember. Um, the detective. The detective talks about like his path going there and from there, and he seemed to remember. He's like, "Oh, I always go this way or this way," but for some reason he has no idea which way he went that night. Um, but I'm pretty sure he would guarantee you it was whatever one probably wasn't on surveillance film, even though he's on surveillance film. Um, what to do? He said he drove home at 11:30 that night and then went to bed within 30 minutes because immediately he got up because he gets up so early at 5:30 or 6 to save the world. Um, that he went to bed immediately. But not Crystal. She always stays up late. Um, I have a note that he used a company called Bluegrass Cellular. I was like, what's all these cellular companies I've never heard of? Like Richard Allen's, I can't remember what it was called now, but he had one I'd never heard of either. Um, Saturday morning, Brooks, because it was the weekend, got up at 6:45. He slept in that morning. Um, and he said he immediately noticed that she was gone. And he called her, but assumed that she had either turned her phone off or it was dead. Um, he never he did make a point to say he never ever suspected she would have an affair or cheat on him, um, with a male or female, which I thought was odd that he said that. But I think it plays into his narcissism. Um, the detectives point out that that they're going to follow up with and get more details from all of Crystal's family. And Brooks immediately kind of gets more talkative, and I feel like his body language changed in the interview. I mean, if you watched that on YouTube, you may have felt the same way, or you may disagree with me completely. But he even then was like, oh, and suddenly he was like, oh, I don't know everything about the farm or the business, my family businesses. I'm not that involved. Um, the detectives asked him if they could take Crystal's phone to evaluate. He said, sure, absolutely. Um, Brooks called. He pays for. He pays. He claims that he pays for everything. I was waiting for him to say they probably had relations that evening, just like Barry Morphew said, and um, you know, who else was it that did that? Anyway, played the night. Exhibits 15 through 17 were pics and contents of Crystal's purse. There was an EBT card, debit, credit card, receipts from Walmart from 733, which then detectives used to go to Walmart and get the surveillance footage of, which we got to watch in the courtroom. It showed them walking into Walmart. It showed them checking out. It showed them leaving Walmart. And Snow said he thought it was 4 or 4:30, and the receipt I think said 4:39. And then they when they examined her vehicle at first, they found nothing of interest. They let's see. Oh, they did contact all the neighbors to try to narrow down when her car was last seen. I They didn't really give a response to how successful that effort was, though. But they did make a point to go to any local business that they thought might have camera footage right away, because they understood that a lot of companies' footage gets written over. So, and at least they did that right. I have some notes on the jury, which I will read on my next live, because I don't want to give personal details about the jurors out at all. But I will give just some of the basic, like there's 8 women, 7 men, um, and then I'll go into depth a little bit more about like some of the things I read from watching them watch the testimony. So then the prosecution reminds the jury that Snow, even during that interview, brought up to Houck that the family was probably going to likely suspect him, and Snow said he himself felt it was strange that Brooks Houck didn't ever report his baby mama missing. It took her mother doing it, and so that would have been an immediate red flag in anyone's book. There was some talk about how law enforcement went to the Ballards and the Ballards are Sherry and Tommy Ballard, Crystal's parents. On the 6th, they weren't home, but Keith, Crystal's ex, was there, and he confirmed that he picked up Eli that evening after they got back from Walmart. There was a sidebar again. The law enforcement ordered a forensic processing of I can't read of the car. They swabbed for DNA. They found gum. They found various items. Brooks had said he did drive that car occasionally, so I don't think that anything inside the car could be used really to prove anything, other than there's been speculation about something from the trunk, but that was not talked about in court today. In fact, the Snow said that he found no evidence that he could prove who was driving the car. We then went into July 7th, and that is when they did a search of the farm. The prosecutor asked what the area of focus was, and Snow said that general overview of everything, but mainly a fire pit. What were they looking for? Snow said, well, we were really looking for any sign of burned evidence. They then showed Exhibit 19, which was a picture of the burn pit. And they did say it was mainly construction debris, so I don't think they found anything in the burn pit. He asked if at this point they were starting to receive tips from people. Snow said, yeah, it started to get complicated because he said, oh, yes, sightings of her in Rhode Island, working in restaurants in other states, lots of psychics, various spottings, all with differing times and days of her on the parkway. Prosecution said, well, like what total footage did you collect? And Snow went into a whole list again of like all of this stuff, but he basically said that again they talked about it's raining and all the surveillance footage at 4:46 and again at 9, because there was a Circle K video, there was a dog park video. The only footage they don't have pretty much of the movements are Brooks, the car or truck leaving the actual house, but there's a church at the that you have to pass by to get out of the subdivision, that has surveillance footage, and so anytime you would leave their house, you would have to have passed that church, and it can be deduced that they would have been within minutes. He then did the prosecutor had Snow point out Houck's truck being visible in all of the surveillance footage. One thing that he did call Brooks out on, and they didn't make as big of a point about it. I think they'll circle back to it, but that that there's footage of him at 3-something going to the farm. Brooks never told him. It told investigators early on that he'd gone to the farm earlier that day. Other than that, like I said, then they have a whole thing. There's dog park, Circle K. There's a camera next to the dog park. There is, I can't read my writing there. Oh, there's a camera near the farm. There's a private residence that had one. They said something about Rosemary's brother, and I couldn't hear it. The video of Brooks going home from the farm that night is slightly off by like minutes. I mean, he said he went home around 11:30. I think it was off at like at 12:04. And he showed, and we got to watch all of the surveillance footage again. So this, the jury saw the truck heading from the farm shortly after 12 a.m. They then showed it passing by all of the other places I said: the Circle K, the dog park, the AI storage place, the church. And one thing that Snow did say, is that other than that, that earlier in the day when he lied about that, that his timeline had been pretty consistent when he, because the prosecutor said, "Would you say it was consistent?" And Snow said yes. And I think that's because they want to prove that he knew he was going to be on surveillance footage, and that goes back into the window tinting. But we'll see. This is going to be a 10-day ish trial. And so after, so when Snow said yes, they had a sidebar, and then they came back. It was 4:17 p.m. and the judge said that basically they had another hour and a half of that interview to go over and discuss just on direct. And so they ended court for the day. The jury went home. We all went home, or well, we all went places. I have been looking around town, getting some footage things, and I'm working on some other stuff and writing the script. But the jury will be back at 8:30 a.m. tomorrow, um, as will I. Um, and I have a feeling that Detective Snow is I think is a very important witness. And even if I don't if I can't afford to stay for the whole trial, I I, I'll be glad that I could come and help support Crystal's family and to um and that I would get to see the detective, because I think he's a good or was a good detective. He's retired now. Um, but I mean, I think if they have an hour and a half left just to talk about that on direct, they're then gonna have cross, and then Joseph Lawson's attorney might cross too. Then they'll have redirect. So my prediction is Snow will be on the stand at least till lunch tomorrow. Um, but who knows? You can never predict those things completely. But as of right now, I think they're predicting this trial and the end of next week. Um, hmm. Let me see. I'm trying to think what else I've got here. So yeah, like I said, if I can figure out a way to stay, I will. If I it's just up in the air right now. Um, I will say I did speak to one of the family members of Crystal today, and I did not try to get her to like come on or do anything or like anything like that. It's not my style. But I did say that you know if there was anything that I could do or that anyone could do to help them, even behind the scenes, and that no one would if they need anything, just to let me know, and I would try to make it happen. So I wanted them to know how many people are really are out there that care about them. Um, and I mean, after having witnessed the attacks and hate that the Patties and the Delphi families went through, I can't bear to see it happen to another victim's families, and it always will. I know that, but I just it's disgusting to me. These people go through the worst hell in the world, and then people go after them and attack them. But that's a different story. Um, I am overheated, and I want to take a shower. Um, um, I did say, of course, please keep Crystal's family in your thoughts and your prayers. If you don't pray, send positive energy, whatever you do. Um, I mean, and let's just hope that they feel some sense of justice after this, so they can start some new chapter of what healing looks like. I mean, when I think about how long Libby and Abby's family had to go without any answers, I'm like, Crystal's family has had to go. Like, I mean, 10 years almost to the day. July 3rd will be 10 years, and I said to her family member that I was speaking to that my only hope other than that is that as soon as that's done, that Tommy gets his justice too, because for anyone that doesn't know that aspect of the case, about a year after Crystal disappeared, her father was murdered. Um, and that is there's not everything about this these cases are bizarre and twisted. Um, and like I said, I want to get into all of them and talk more in depth about all of them. I actually have an entire video that I did doing every day of the first trial with Stephen Lawson, that I still need to put out just so people have it for context. But anyway, please, I don't think Crystal's case is getting as much attention as it deserves. I think that it has over the years been a huge case, and I think it might just be because of Karen Reed ending and Lori Vallow Daybell just ending, and but you know, trust me, it's full. There's definitely a lot of people here, um, but I'm not seeing the attention focused on it that I've seen on some other cases recently, and I think that it deserves it. Um, and one of the other reasons I wanted to be here is because, just like in Delphi, they there are no cameras in the courtroom, so for the public to find out anything about what goes on in the courtroom, we have to rely on people that are inside of that courtroom. And no one's perfect. I get things wrong. Everyone gets everyone gets things wrong. You know, mainstream media gets things wrong. Everyone does. Um, so I think collectively, sometimes it's important that there are people in there that will report on it. Um, and I want to be able to do that for this case. Um, it was interesting, just on a personal note, going into having been so part of the Delphi community for so long, to go into a case that I really don't know anyone online from, and like going into a courtroom where I don't know anyone. It was kind of refreshing in a way. Um, the only person actually that was there that I knew was lawyer Lee. Um, she was she's here. She's covering it. I didn't. I said hello to her. I didn't um, speak to her long. I just said hello. But that was the only face that I recognized as far as someone from the Delphi world. But yeah, anyway, I will be here tomorrow morning at 8:30 Central Time. It's hard for me to keep remembering that because I'm normally do Eastern. Um, and I'm sorry that I was late. Again, my setup here is a disaster, and I will do better tomorrow. I promise. I promise. Um, and again, I appreciate each and every one of you. If you didn't see earlier, I did start memberships on my channel, which I'm going to be sharing. Nothing behind a paywall as far as that I'm going to hide from other people, but just little fun things about my life or early access to content, things like that. Um, just in a space where I feel safer opening up and being vulnerable, and you know feeling like I have a real relationship with more of you than I have felt in the past. Because I can be kind of private, so I'm trying to work on that. Anyway, I'm gonna let you all go. It's late, and like I said, I'm hot and sweaty. I want to take a shower, and I mean, 12:45. I mean, I bet all the good hotels are taken. I better hurry up. Okay. Anyway, everyone have a good night. Please say a prayer for Crystal Rogers, um, her family, her children, and everyone that was affected by, again, yet another selfish, narcissistic act that served no purpose other than to stroke someone's own ego. Monster. And I hope that he burns in hell. Um, have a good night. And I hope that every one of you have a great night. And I'll talk to you later. Bye. Peace out. Bye. Lord knows how to end this thing because I usually use StreamYard and I'm not on it tonight. So you're seeing the behind the scenes stuff, just like I don't know.